Hey, what's up? I am Teal the Book Mage, and today I'm going to be doing a review of Rowell's Carry On. I'm not sure I need to introduce this book. I figure everyone probably knows what it's about already, but in case you're unsure, it's basically like a reworking of like a Harry Potter style fanfiction into an actual novel. So it follows the chosen one trope of Simon Snow and his friends Penny and Agatha and like his rival roommate Baz. And they're in a magical school and stuff's going down, and that's just kind of the basic plot. So let me start by saying that gay fiction involving vampires was literally how I got my start on the internet. And it was pretty much the whole basis for the first online story that I ever started posting as a teenager. So I definitely have a soft spot for that. And that was pretty much the whole thing that drew me to this book, to the point where I finished this in about a day. I have never read another Rowell book. I do know that this one is meant to be like an elaboration of a fan fiction of a fictitious fiction story that features in one of Rowell's other works, Fangirl. Basically, as I understand it, Rowell has it's a contemporary novel called Fangirl, in which the main character writes fanfiction about the series Simon Snow, and I think this is meant to be a representation of her fanfiction? I don't know, I just really like that it's loosely based on just the premise of being a fanfiction. This is perhaps the spark of brilliance that made me really yearn for a book like this, that I didn't even know that I really wanted until now. Or until like 8 months ago when I actually read this. Just pure self-indulgent irreverence. So yeah, the premise is wonderful and I love it. Before I get into the book proper, I just want to say I read fanfiction. There's just something so great and free about fanfiction. It's like since fanfiction is written for the self, it's like it's your thoughts and your feelings and your desires for a series. And it just tends to come with this wonderfully self-assured tone of, this is for me. So in just true fangirl fashion, characters and relationships just like flood to the forefront, and they do overshadow the plot a little bit, but that's okay. You go into this knowing that it's really about the characters, like you would in a fanfiction. Usually it's just about the characters. So this is a novel that knows exactly what you want. Bit of angst, bit of pining, that enemies to friends to lovers trope that really does fill that big Drarry-shaped hole in the market, which apparently was still a thing. So because this is based on a fictional world inside another contemporary fictional world, essentially it fills the place of, as I've already said, it fills the place of Harry Potter in Rowell's other novel, I believe. So it is all very familiar to us. Basically, we don't need 7 books of build-up for this payoff. The whole chosen one goes to magical school is a familiar creature at this point, and it just gives us a pass to dive straight into the juicy bits. So I want to put my adoration for this style aside for a moment so we can actually get to the review proper. So if we're talking about the plot, it's your very typical magical mystery just burning away in the background there. The characters are actually all very proactive about the plot, which is refreshing. It's nice to see that after 7 years of magical boarding school, some characters aren't just waiting around for it anymore. Which is good, because as the reader we really don't want to be waiting around either. I did find the plot a little bit slow in places. I kept expecting the characters to catch on to this thread of plot like a lot easier than it was revealed to them. And not to say it felt a bit cheap to have them just ask their parents, because that was a big part of it. But the plot really does take a backseat for me. It was okay. I mean, in fanfiction, it gets a pass, because in shippy style fanfiction, the plot isn't really all that you come for. So yeah, I feel like it's allowed to be put onto the back burner a little bit. I mean, there definitely is plot there, but you can really see it coming like a mile away. The apparent twists were pretty obvious to me. I feel like there were 3 twists, I guess, and I'll come back to those when I get to the actual spoiler section of this book. And yeah, this isn't really a spoiler, this is more just like a little in-depth like look at one of the aspects of the book, but just for the book in general, I really did like the use of phrases and rhymes and song lyrics and things as like words of power. I thought that was really cool, I thought it was really fresh, and I liked that. It was a really good new idea, and you know, it just felt quirky and modern and relatable, especially to someone who, like, to be fair, I don't get a lot of pop culture references, but I still appreciate them. I can tell when one's been made and I kind of sit there like, yeah, I know that's one. Man, I bet that's a funny reference. Though, as someone with a lot of Yorkshire slang and all powerful meme phrases in the dialect, I wonder exactly how somebody like me would fare. I feel like there could have been some more UK-centric words and phrase references, just to like ground the setting a little bit more. I actually thought there might be a callback at one point, and this isn't really a spoiler, it's pretty early on, and it's not plot relevant. But at one point, Penny's trying to make a new spell, and she's wondering if she can get that Call Me Maybe song to like just to work as a spell. Since there are so many instances of characters just not having their phone or just not having the phone number of another character, I kind of half expected it to like hark back to that joke, and that maybe she would like cast this spell and the phones would connect. Either one person would just magically call the other, they would just somehow know the number, or the phone would just dial out to that correct number, and it would sort of like really make the mention of it bit more worthwhile. But it was just sort of left there as like a meme reference that nobody ever went back to, and you just sort of gloss over it in the beginning. It could have been a fun callback, but it wasn't. The tone too was pretty good. I think a lot of the time humour in books is just not up to par for me. Like, I can see it and I can enjoy it, but very, very rarely do I laugh at books. Even when other reviewers can say like they were laughing the whole time that they were reading it, I just wasn't. And that's nothing to do with like the medium, because I laugh at Tumblr text posts all the time. So it's nothing to do with it being the medium of text. It's not always my humour, I guess. So I realised that that is more me and my taste, and I'm not going to hold this against the book. I could tell that there was like a nice humorous tone throughout a lot of it, and that I do know from other reviews that a lot of other people really appreciated that, but it just kind of missed it for me, I guess. I could enjoy it, it was nice and entertaining, but I didn't laugh. You know, it was still fun and amusing. Although, rather to my own shame, I did laugh once at Gampire. Thank you for that, Rainbow Rowell. You really get me. Okay, so this is the point where I'm going to go into spoilers for the book. So from here, there's no limits to anything that I might say or that I might spoil, and there will be like plot relevant spoilers. So if you don't want it ruined, now is your time to bail. Personally, I think that you could watch this review and get all the spoilers and still enjoy this book perfectly well anyway. I mean, it is kind of obvious, you know, you kind of know what's going to happen because of the type of book that this is, and as I've said, the plot does take a back seat and you're not really here for that. I feel like you could be completely spoiled for everything in this book and still have a fantastic time reading it, and I don't think you would miss out on that experience at all. But just for anyone who doesn't want that, you know, now's your time to go. You have been warned. You gone? Good. So for the twists, I feel like unless you're a very inexperienced or just a very naive reader, or you're just not paying attention, you're gonna see the twists immediately. I never once thought for a second that Lucy's ghost calling Simon her Rosebud boy at the beginning was anything but that. The callback to it at the end makes me feel like maybe we were supposed to doubt or to think that, like Simon, that it was Baz's mum right up until that point. But it was so glaringly obvious. I didn't even realise that it might have been intended to be like a revelationary phrase until that phrase Rosebud boy was emphasised again at the end. It's like being shown a blue square towards the beginning of the book and you're like, yep, that's a blue square. And another character in the book might be thinking, did I see a triangle or something? But to the reader it's very obvious that nah, it was a blue square. But then right at the end the characters are all like, yep, and it was a blue square, and you're sat there thinking, wait, what are the readers saying, like yellow triangles or something? That's kind of how I feel like that went. The fact that it might have been meant to be a twist or a revelation that people didn't pick up on was in itself very confusing to me, because it was so obvious, and I can't tell if we're meant to know and it's just like for the characters, or if maybe we weren't meant to know, because if that's the case, that was just very, it was the worst red herring, because it wasn't even a red herring. I also figured out the humdrum pretty early on. The minute we knew that it looked like Simon, I was kind of like, alright, this is a dead giveaway. And then the moment when I had it, so I was kind of suspicious, I had like, you know, my ideas at that point, but the moment when it was completely confirmed and I was like, yep, I know exactly what's going on here, the minute that Humdrum says he gets more nothing from Simon, or whatever it is exactly that he says, that to me just spelled everything out so completely plain as day. For the reader, as I say, that might have been intended, but it just meant that later, when we're at Penny's house, that slow crawl up to Simon's revelation felt like it was meant to be our slow crawl as the reader. The sort of scene where you can finally see it coming together and, you know, it all gets confirmed by the characters and everything is finally clear, except that, you know, it was already clear like 50 pages ago. I get that the characters still had to go through that motion, but the pace of the writing is supposed to be what leads us. And the whole time I kind of felt like I was in a car that wouldn't start. Like I was like, okay, come on, catch up now, you know, I would like to get to the ending, please. Finally revealing the mage as the antagonist was kind of painful. Like, it had to be him. It had to be him. It's the whole reason why I can't watch a lot of shows like Bones. I used to watch, you know, shows like that with my mum years back, and it would always get to the point where after a few seasons, you know, for the last several seasons that we're on, by the halfway point I would accurately first time guess who the murderer was every single time for every single episode. And it's just because once you know how a story's written, once you know how those twists go, there's very rarely ever any sort of surprise. Same with this. It's not a bad thing specifically. Basically, the rule is, unless the writing is so bad that a random antagonist is just sort of introduced from nowhere right at the very last second, which is a horrible way to write, by the way, the antagonist has to be somebody already mentioned in the novel. I feel like that's kind of obvious to state. We knew it wasn't going to be the insidious humdrum itself from the moment that it was revealed that, you know, it's more of a force than a person. That's a bad antagonist. That and all like the mystery stuff going on behind the scenes made it pretty abundantly clear that some of the character had been pulling the strings behind all of the things. So for me, I looked at the characters that we already had. There was really only that one answer. Like, Baz's parents didn't get enough attention to be anything like really plot relevant. Obviously not going to be the mystery man that they end up tracking down, because that would be just too easy. The Coven and the family are just like faceless non-forces somewhere in the background. The only characters you're left with by the midway point are the mage and Ebb. And it was just pretty obvious that it was going to be the mage. Like, it just was. I'm sorry. Okay, so plot aside, the pace is still pretty good. Even though the main plot isn't going to be the best thing that you've ever read, you're coming here to see the characters work through it. That's the draw. It's sort of like watching a reaction video, but in book form. To be honest, sometimes you can sort of enjoy it more when you don't even have to focus on the plot. It's like you already know what's going on there. We know where all the jump scares are, so to speak. We're just here to watch the characters freak out about it. So with that said, onto the characters. I liked Simon. I loved Baz. Baz is like the absolute asshole character that everyone really just kind of loves to hate, but also you actually really love him. Oh, I love Baz. I am here for Baz. If this book had been short, one Baz, I might have given it a miss. I also like that he was the first, from his perspective, to sort of like reveal his feelings to the reader. None of that like constant back and forth self-denial sort of thing. He was like, no, I am gay, and here is a pretty attractive guy. Fucking help me. Ugh, Baz, beautiful Baz, you have my sympathies. So their relationship in the end was really sweet. I like how it avoided like the common roll your eyes type tropes of like the lovers into enemies, back to lovers, back to enemies, back and forth and blah blah blah. But it also didn't commit the unforgivable sin of the insta couple. Like, they were together, but the whole dynamic of their relationship before that didn't immediately just disappear. There was a clear transition. Where their characters had been two opposing forces, they now had to function as a pair without losing any of that character. It's about bending more than it is changing, especially over such a short period of time. And the romance is sweet as well. Not too oversaturated with fervent looks and constant snogging, but enough that the book delivers on its satisfying shippy promises. That said, I wasn't 100% sure on Simon's own thoughts about his sexuality. Like, in his own narrative, we were kind of stuck between this dichotomy of straight or gay. Like, as though bi or pan or demisexual or any of those things like just don't come into the equation, like they just don't exist. It kind of felt like a bit oversimplified. As I say, it's still perfectly a valid conversation. I just feel like there may have been other options there. Not that it's not okay for him to just be completely canonically gay by the end of the novel. I just feel like with those being the only options, it might have been a slightly oversimplified conversation, but maybe that's just me. On to the other characters. I really liked Penny. She was very clearly the Hermione of the group, and I would like to see more of her. There is another follow-up novel to this coming out soon, hopefully this year, I think. I feel like Penny had more to give as a character that we just didn't get to see because it just wasn't plot relevant to the book. I really did like the dynamics of her friendship with Simon. I liked that there was pretty much no question about whether they were friends or something more. It's just really refreshing to be able to see like a close male-female friendship that just didn't have to dip its toes into the whole red herring love interest trope sort of thing. Okay, Agatha, I couldn't stand. She was so bland and so boring every single time she spoke. It's like all we had to see something from her perspective. I was just internally groaning the whole time. It's like she was cock-blocking the story. The only part I actually liked of hers was her ending. I was really happy to read that part. I was really happy that she got to make that decision of, no, this is what I want for me, and you know, she just wants to go and sit and chill by a beach with a dog, and she got that for herself. And I actually really liked that ending, not because she's like gone and out of the picture, but because like even though I disliked reading her parts, I still really liked that ending for a character. I thought that was really nice. Though I can't help but feel like someone is missing a dog out there. Other characters, the mage sucked. He wasn't really fleshed out. I liked what little we got to hear and see of Baz and Penelope's mums. Other characters like Eb and Nicodemus and Fiona, they were all fine. Can't really think of anyone else, so like if I forgot anyone major, then clearly they left no impression on me. So with all that said, I think I need to like wind down this review and sum it up with a star rating. So if you're not 100% on how my star rating systems work, I'm kind of really harsh with my scores. Like it's really rare that I will ever give a book 5 stars, and most books that people would give 5 stars to, I tend to give 4 stars to. Like it's kind of all shifted down a bit because I'm just really harsh with my marking, okay? I might end up making a whole separate video on how I mark things. So I really did enjoy this book, and I think for me I would rate Carry On a 3.5 stars out of 5 stars. It was fun, I enjoyed it, and I might read it again, though I'd probably just skip over a bunch of it and just read some of like the fun dialogue and the more gripping magical scenes. And the making out, obviously. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this book. I actually have recommended this book already to several people in real life, because I don't know why I specified in real life, as though I have fictional friends. Yeah, and I'm pretty excited for the sequel that's coming out, I think, this year, 2019. Fingers crossed. It's definitely not the best thing that I've ever read, but it is one of the most fun, I think. And I think as someone who enjoys more fantasy, it was never gonna be my favourite book. It is, however, the kind of story that I really do like to indulge in and just absorb and enjoy. As I said, I did pretty much read this in a day. I got it like after midday-ish when it was delivered, and I finished it the following day, so it's definitely something you can binge read, and I would highly recommend that because I binge read it and I really enjoyed the experience. So while it's never going to be like my favourite book, I really did enjoy reading it, I really did enjoy the experience. It was really fun, and I do consider this like a really good book for what it is and for what it is meant to be. There's no point me sitting here trying to compare it to like epic fantasies because it's a different creature altogether, but for what it was, I really liked it. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, I'm really hyped for part 2, which will hopefully have a lot more snogging. So that is it. That is my little mini awkward review of Rainbow Rowell's Carry On. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm pretty sure everyone's read this by now, but if you haven't, just maybe take the time to read it. It seems like a long book, but the font is pretty big. Like the font is actually really big, so you really could just fly through this. So yeah, do let me know in the comments section if like what your favourite parts of this book were, if you disagreed with me or if you agree with me. Like, I love to talk about books, I love to gush about books, and I don't have anyone to talk about books with, so if you're one of those people that likes to talk about books and this is a book that you'd like to talk about, hi, hello. I realise I'm late to the party on this. It's not a new book and everyone's already read it and talked about it, but I'm new to BookTube, so hence why I'm doing reviews for all the really old books that no one cares about anymore, but I care. So hopefully despite all that you did enjoy the review. Yeah, I still don't have an outro, but that's it, that's the end of this video, and I'm gonna go now, so I will see you later guys, bye!